Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm so sorry that I wasn't here last week. I try to upload every Monday, and last week I was unable to because I wasn't feeling well, and so I decided to just take a week off because I do work. I work from home, but I do work full time, and that on top of everything else I've been doing, I just needed a weekend to really unwind and do some self-care and listen to my body. And so yeah, it was really helpful. I feel much better now, so thank you for sticking with me. And this week we are talking about my star rating system. So the 5-star rating system is pretty standard. It kind of stems from Goodreads because Goodreads really wants you to rate every book on a 5-star scale. Now, even though it's standard, a star rating is very subjective, and what might be 5 stars for one person isn't 5 stars for another person. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of let you guys know how I rate books, since this is a book channel and I've had several videos go up lately where I give you a star rating, and without the context I feel like it's not necessarily fair for you to gauge what might be 5 stars or 3 stars for me. And on that note, if you scroll through my Goodreads, you might think, Emily, why do you hate every book that you read? Why are you even a reader if you never rate anything 5 stars? And it's true, I tend to be very stingy with my stars. And if you look at my Goodreads profile, it gives you as a reviewer your average rating, and my average is 3.24 right now, which is pretty low. And you would think that over time you would learn your reading interests better, and so you would read more books that you are inclined to like and rate higher, and that is true for some readers. However, for me, it tends to be more that I am harsher with my comparisons and criticisms of books because I have read books that I really like, and if the current book I'm reading doesn't hold to that same standard, then I can't rate it the same way. And to be honest, I mean, the star rating system is efficient, and it's a really easy way to see, okay, this person liked this book and this person didn't like this book. But it's not a perfect system, and it's actually really hard to rate a book because for you, the reader, it seems inconsequential. Like, oh, this was 3 stars, this was 5 stars, this was 2 stars, whatever. But those star ratings actually mean a lot to the authors and the publishers, and publishers can base the response, and booksellers can base the response on whether or not to buy a book or to greenlight a sequel of a book based on the Goodreads reviews and how readers are responding to it. So really, I mean, it's kind of sad in some ways that writers spend years, and editors and publishers and there's a lot of people involved in a book, and it can take years to get one written and put out, and to have that boil down to a star rating is just, it can be really dehumanizing and demeaning, and I totally understand that. And it's not a perfect system, and that's why, I mean, I'm really bad at always writing a review. I mean, a lot of the times I will just give a star rating because it's easy, but I do want to be better at writing reviews and to justify my rating and explain it, because I mean, if you don't like a book, it's such a subjective thing, and to provide evidence to why you don't like it, I think is our duty as a reader. And so yeah, I do want to be better at that, and I'm sorry that I haven't been good at that in the past. At the same time, like I said, a star rating system is very convenient and efficient for readers, publishers, authors, booksellers, librarians. It's very easy to see, oh, this person who I tend to agree with their ratings really liked this book just based on the stars. I should read that too. I should add it to my TBR. It's a really efficient system. So I feel like I need to be really honest in the way I rate books, because other readers or people I know might know that our reading tastes tend to line up. And so I kind of have a responsibility to say, this is how I felt about this book. If you haven't read it, you might feel this way too. Or like, if I really hated a book, I'm not going to say that I didn't really hate the book, because I feel like that would be dishonest. And so it's kind of a messy thing. And I just want to explain how I go about it so that you will understand it better. So for me, every book I read starts out at 3 stars. This is the baseline. This is totally neutral territory. Every book starts out this way for me. And I mean, if you think about what is really like midway, it would be 2.5 stars. But Goodreads doesn't allow for half stars, and so I just start off 3 stars. And if I like it, then I'll bump it up a little. But if it does something that I don't like, then I'll bump it down a little. So I rate books on 4 areas of criteria, and that is plot, characters, writing, and overall enjoyment. And the first 3 are pretty equally weighted: plot, character, writing. But the 4th area, overall enjoyment, can outweigh the other 3. And so I can recognize that the book has all the essential ingredients of a high quality book. It might have good plot, characters, and writing, but I still might not enjoy it. And so if that's the case, then it's not going to get 5 stars from me, but it also won't get 1 star, because that just would be unfair for me to acknowledge that this book is actually really well written. It just didn't work for me, but it might work for someone else. It's definitely not going to get 1 star from me for that. So basically, I read a book, and as I'm reading, it starts off 3 stars, and say I really like the characters, or the plot really sucks me in, or the writing's just beautiful. If there's a lot of good figurative language, or just like, I don't know, use of language, then I will probably bump it up a star. But say it has good characters, or the plot is really interesting, but the writing is just really annoying, then, I might bump it up 1 for the parts that I do enjoy, but then I'll bump it back down for the ones that annoys me. And so that's why a lot of my books end up 3 stars, because there are things I liked and things that I didn't like. Now, if a book is boring and I don't hate it, but I'm not enjoying it, it will almost always be 2 stars from me, because like I said, enjoyment kind of outweighs all the other categories. But sometimes it can be boring, and I can recognize that the plot was really good, or the writing was really good, or maybe it started off strong and then kind of fizzled out in the last half. That also tends to happen to me a lot. And so, it just kind of depends on how many issues I have with it to see how it evens out. And so 3 stars, neutral. I end a lot of books with 3 stars because it was just fine. It was just okay for me. If it's 2 stars, then it was a little below neutral for me. Like, it wasn't the best, but I didn't hate it, and I did get through it. If it's 4 stars, generally I really liked it. And there were a lot of things that I appreciated in it, but it might not be my favorite, or it did well in 3 of the categories, but maybe had like some glaring plot holes or something like that. So for some specific examples of what books would fall into these categories, for 4 stars, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, because this book really sucked me in. I felt like the plot was really, really strong, but there was a lot of unnecessary romance in the book that I felt kind of took away from the characterization. And the way it was written, it over-prepared you for everything, because it was written from the characters' perspectives, but they're like way in the future when they're writing it. Or, I mean, you don't know how far in the future, but you can tell that all of this has already happened to them. And so it really over-prepared you for everything. And I think it took away from a lot of the like exciting moments, because it kind of told you that those moments were coming. And so even though I really enjoyed it, and I've read it twice, it's like a solid 4 stars for me. So an example of a 3-star books would be Sleeping Giants. And this book, The premise is super intriguing if you don't know about it, because I don't think I've talked about it on my channel before, but it's been a while since I've read it, so I'm sorry if this is bad. These pieces of a giant robot are found scattered across the world, and so the scientists like put them all together, and it can be like operated by two individuals, and it's basically like a super weapon. And so it's alien technology, and we don't know how it got here, but we do figure out a way to operate it. So I'm sorry that was a really bad synopsis, but anyway. So this was totally 3 stars for me because I really liked the concept, and especially towards the beginning, I was kind of hooked and I wanted to learn more about it. But the way it's written, you have these case files and a lot of time jumps between each one. And I felt that it was very hard to connect to the characters because you only see glimpses of them over time. And it was really hard to be totally absorbed in the story when you are missing big chunks of it. So you only get like little snapshots along the way. And so I wasn't really able to be totally invested in the story because of the way it was written. And it just kind of all felt like exposition, like it was leading up to the next book. And the next book, actually, I think it's Waking Gods, totally amazing. I really, really liked the second book in the series. And the epilogue of the first book was really good too, because it made you want to read the second book even more. But yeah, so the second book I rated higher, but the first one, totally 3 stars from me because it was just kind of neutral. So an example of a 2-star book from me, like I said, it's pretty much any book that bores me. So a lot of classics. I was an English major for undergrad and had to read a lot of classics, and like I chose that life. So we read a lot of classics like Frankenstein, and we read a lot of like Greek tragedies, Victorian books, and it's just not my genre of choice because I find them to be boring. However, as an English major especially, I recognize that these books are really well written, most of them at least. They have a lot of details in them, and the setting and the characters are all very well developed, and so I acknowledge that they have the ingredients of a good book. It's just not a book that I am going to enjoy. So most of the time, classics are 2 stars for me. Some other examples would be Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I actually also read this in college. This is like a sci-fi classic, but it is more YA, I guess. But I found the plot to be very repetitive, and there wasn't character development like at all. And the writing was very like overly simplistic. So I didn't enjoy it either because of those 3 things, and so this was a 2-star read for me. A more recent 2-star read for me was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, because I felt like this book, it is very long and the plot was totally bloated and it wasn't succinct. Like I felt like it needed to be edited a lot, and like the plot was, it's pretty much 2 books in one, so it was a little incoherent even trying to get from start to finish. It did have some metaphors in it, but the metaphors and other like figurative language used was just hammered into you, and it pretty much stripped all the nuance from it. And any like references or callbacks to the original series was just like overdone, and it felt very shoehorned in and kind of felt like a cash grab, to be honest. And so even though I did enjoy getting back into the world and finding out more about the Hunger Games, as a book it just wasn't well executed in my opinion. So this would definitely be a 2-star read. So 5-star books, I don't give out that often, to be honest, but I do give them out, and I did do a whole video about 5-star reads from me. I'll try to link it in the card and in the description if you want to check it out. So anyway, 5-star books. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I've read a lot of books just in general. I've read a fair amount of books, and I've read a lot of books that I really liked. And once you get that feeling that this book was written for me and it just like speaks to your soul and you never want to leave it and the characters feel like your friends, like I know what a 5-star book feels like. And it's very hard not to compare that to every book I read. If a book doesn't give me that feeling, then I can't rate it 5 stars because it doesn't give me that feeling. And this book over here did. And so that's why I tend to not rate books 5 stars. At the same time, I do tend to rate books 5 stars when I reread them. So often I'll read a book, rate it 4 stars or 4.5 stars, and I just don't feel like it deserves that extra step up. But then it sticks with me, and like a year later or 2 years later, whenever, I'll pick it back up again and I'll read it, and I will appreciate it even more the second time. And so the second time I do tend to give 5 stars. So to me, that tells me that I am stingy with my stars, because if I felt like it deserved 5 stars the second time and I appreciated it more and it stuck with me enough that I did pick it up again, that means it probably deserved the 5 stars the first time I read it, and I was just too stingy, or I didn't appreciate it to the fullest extent. So some examples of 5-star books that I didn't rate 5 stars initially and then went back and bumped it up to 5 stars. One example is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I read this when it came out, and then I read it a year later. And when it came out, I gave it 4 stars. And then I reread it, and I loved it so much. And I really loved it the first time too, but I think my reason for giving it 4 stars was really silly. Like, I think I felt to myself that giving a John Green book 5 stars would like hurt my credibility in a way, because he is a YA author. His books are kind of quirky. They're not, I mean, they're well written, but they're not like the best literature in the world. And so I felt like I didn't want to have this be a 5-star book for me, because I feel like I want to be a sophisticated reader and only rate 5 stars books that are like literary masterpieces. But that's really silly. I really love this book. I felt like it was really well written. Even though it's a YA contemporary, it was so good. And so it totally deserves 5 stars in my opinion. So I gave it 5 stars. Along those same lines, Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I believe I've read this 3 times, and the first 2 times I gave it like 4 stars because I loved it, but it felt like it was longer than it needed to be. And again, just like not a literary masterpiece, and so I didn't feel like I could give it 5 stars. But the third time I read it, I'm just like, I love this book, and I shouldn't be ashamed that I love this book. So, I'm gonna give it 5 stars because in my opinion, it deserves 5 stars. I keep coming back to it. I love the characters. I love the story. It has so much meaning for me because I feel so connected to Kath and her experience in college. Kind of resonated with me because it wasn't the same as my experience, but it was close in some cases. She struggles with social anxiety. I struggle with social anxiety. And I mean, it is a book that I keep coming back to, and so it's definitely 5 stars for me. And then last is Children of Time, which I've only read once, but whenever I first rated it, I think I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars and rounded to 4 stars. But I could not stop thinking about it afterwards. I could not think of anything else, any other book for like months. This was just stuck in my head. I kept thinking about it and going back to it and just like marveling at what it took to write a book like this. And so eventually, like a month later, I went back on Goodreads and bumped it up to 5 stars because I'm like, it stuck with me. it impressed me. And it did take me like 3 months to read because it's a big book, but that's not the book's fault. I'm a slow reader and I get distracted. My mind never left the plot of this book, and so totally worth 5 stars. Okay, so let's talk about 1-star books for a little bit. It's really hard because, like I said, star ratings do affect writers and the way that publishers treat a book. And so I don't want to give a 1-star rating for no good reason. However, I also want to be true and honest. And so if I absolutely hate a book, then it can be a 1-star rating from me. I've only given a couple, but I have given them out. And normally it's that the book failed pretty much in all 4 of my criteria. I felt like the plot was bad, maybe it had some plot holes, the characters I didn't connect with, or I felt like they didn't have very good character development. The writing was probably too simplistic or cliche or something like that, and I just didn't like it. But on top of that, for it to be a 1-star book, often it will be problematic in a way. And I do try to separate the author from the work. And so if it's the author that's problematic, but I've already read and enjoyed the book, I tend to not change my rating based on that. I might put a note in my review that, oh, by the way, this author, you might want to avoid their books for these reasons. But if the book itself is problematic, then that will affect my rating. So the best example I can give for a book like this is All the Bright Places, which I read a few years ago. In this book, I did not feel like the characters were well developed. I felt like the writing was really cliche, the plot wasn't really noteworthy, but on top of all of it, it had a very problematic representation of mental illness. It's not that I didn't like the representation of mental illness, it's that I felt like it was a dangerous representation. So this book is a YA contemporary, so its target audience are young adults, and I felt like this book featured suicide just as a shock value and to manipulate the reader's emotions. And it didn't add any support or moral of the story or anything like that. It just included it to make you sad, to make you feel sad and cry, and it didn't offer any hope or anything like that. And so you'll see this topic treated a lot in YA contemporaries. I've read a few, but most of the time, whenever it does come up, I mean, it's always going to be hard to read, but there is some sort of like reason why it's included, be that like this is what it looks like, and if you feel this way, then this is how you can maybe get help. Or if you know someone who has gone through this, you might be feeling this way, and it's okay to grieve. It's okay to go through that process and to, feel the things that you're feeling. And so there are a lot of great YA books that deal with that topic, and All the Bright Places is not one of them. I felt like it was not only dangerous, but I can't even I hated it so much, and I just my hatred for it grew over time. And now anytime I see someone enjoying it or enjoying the movie, I mean, that's totally on them. You can like what you like, but it just was very, very problematic for me. So 1 star. I will never read it again. I sold my copy, and I wish I could just block it out of my life. Okay, so let's move on to not so heavy of a topic. No stars. I do sometimes give no stars to books, and this is typically when I have finished reading a book and I mark it as read, but I feel like I'm not in the position to really judge it fully. So I do this a lot with poetry collections and graphic novels and sometimes nonfiction. All books are art, right? And as someone who has read a lot and who was an English major, I feel like I'm in an okay position to judge a written story. But poetry and graphic novels, comics, those are a different form of art in a way, and one that I'm less familiar with. And so I can definitely still rate it on enjoyment. But sometimes I feel like I'm not the one, like, who am I to judge what this creator is doing, because I just might not be getting it, and that's okay. So sometimes I just don't rate books. However, if I don't finish a book, then I will never give it a rating because I feel like that's just not fair. So I do DNF books sometimes, but typically if I DNF a book, it's because I have just started it and I'm not that into it. So typically I'll only read a few chapters or listen to like an hour of it or so, and if I'm not into it by then I will DNF it. Very rarely will I get like a good ways into a book and then completely bail on it. I'm such a slow reader anyway that I feel like if I've spent that much time on one book, that I just need to see it through and have it count towards my Goodread goal for the year. So again, another personal flaw of mine, but that is what I do. There have been some books that I've gotten quite a ways in and was not enjoying it and DNF'd it, such as American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman is one of those authors that I really, really want to love, and I've read several of his books, and I just don't think I click with his writing style. I did like The Ocean at the End of the Lane. That one was okay. But American Gods is so long. I think the audiobook is like 24 hours long, and I got halfway through it. I listened to 12 hours of it, and I saw that I had 12 hours left, and I was not enjoying it at all. And so I did DNF that one. Another recent one was Space Opera. I forgot who the author is, but I was listening to the audiobook of that one earlier this year because I've heard really, really good things about it. And it kind of has the same vibe as The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I love, is one of my favorite books. And I got several hours into the audiobook and I was confused and just not interested, and so I DNF'd that one as well. But the moral of the story is that I don't rate books that I haven't finished, and I don't mark them as read if I haven't finished them. Okay, so that is my star rating system. This video was a lot longer than I intended it to be because I just rambled a lot, so I don't know if all of that will be kept in, but thank you for watching, and I hope that this helped explain my rating system better and why every book I read tends to be 3 stars. Let me know if your rating system is similar to this, or if this system makes sense to you, because I know it's not the way that everyone else treats their rating, and so I just hope that it helped clarify how I go about it and why I'm so stingy with 5 stars, and also some areas that I need to improve. Like, I know that I need to be better at reviewing books on Goodreads, and I will try to be better at that. So, okay, thanks for watching. Bye. Script. I actually wrote a script this time. Normally that means that all of the information has gone out of my head and it ends up not helping, but we're gonna try it. Sorry, a really cute dog just ran by my window. He is so cute. He's like a Yorkie. He's like this big. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. Where was I? I'm gonna have to restart the whole thing. Okay. Criteria I use, no, let me restart that. People looking at me outside my window. I live in an apartment complex, and so there are a lot of people outside. And it's just a little embarrassing for people to be able to see me through my window. So I'm gonna wait for them to walk by. I rate books on 4 areas of criteria, and that is plot, characters, oh gosh, what's the third?